So Louise will just start the recording. There it goes. Okay, so let me put my slides up. There we go. Okay, well, hi everyone. I nearly said good morning. Hi everyone. I appreciate all of those who made the effort today. I kind of completely forgot, as an entrepreneur, things like weekends and public holidays are faint memories. So I know that you all need to get on the roads, and so if I forget to say it later, let me say it now. Please all drive incredibly carefully. You know what the South African roads are like, so just all be very, very safe. Okay, I saw a couple of mentors. I saw Rob there. I'm not sure I saw Mike, but I saw Rob, so thanks, Rob. I think Tom, hopefully, I haven't seen Friedrich yet. I got a message from Friedrich to say he's finishing something about the infrastructure conference, but he will hope to join. So we might be a bit light on mentors, but if Tom joins, then that's great. What we want to do today is I just want to do a soft skill so that we mix it up a little bit, and also that you get some CPD points along the way as well, and get a bit of a conversation started. So just to change the energy, and then I want to just quickly go into with a mentor's login. Just make sure everybody is becoming increasingly familiar. So Shell, I'm on MASELULEKANE. Sorry, that was unintended. There are various ways of communicating with each other now, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands the ways of communicating that are very confidential, and the ways of communicating that are more open, because we're wanting sort of some peer-to-peer and peer-to-professional and maybe a multi-mentor conversation going. So some of you already, Calvin and Aaron and a couple of others, have been experimenting with the communicator, and that will increasingly become nicer to use, more functionality and searches and tags and keywords and emojis and all that sort of kind of thing. So that's just, it will get better and better as we roll it out. But I just wanted to go through and make sure that if anybody hasn't tried to use it, so that you are aware of how to use it. I'm finding it useful with Kim, because Calvin can post something and I can then give a comment, and then Kim can see what I've said, and then she can give a different comment. And then Calvin's got the benefit of seeing two very different structural engineers trying to do a traffic management TER with both of us with virtually zero knowledge of your work environment, but just trying to give you some different ways of doing it. Remember, there is no model answer for a TER. It has to be your own thinking, and you have to write it, and we can only advise. Ultimately, it's going to have to be written by everyone, and I think that's where it's really critical with Rob's involvement. Being an expert in the space, he can help with with some of our input and things like that. So there's some areas where you might have confidential stuff, or you might need something, and some of you already ping me privately on WhatsApp, which is fine. And but ideally the collective learning we want to keep within CHQ, because the idea is that everybody sees the feedback. This MASELULEKANE and this technology is not designed as a one-on-one coaching kind of thing. It just isn't designed like that. It's not. There's just no group value from that approach. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have one-on-one privately, but you can do that in Naukili. So, or you can do that on WhatsApp. This is more about the collective sharing. So I just got a note from my brother that he's in the group. So welcome, Tom. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, so thanks, Phil. Sorry, I was a bit late. I just had to get that ethics webinar at TUT up and running, and they were having challenges. But my other brother, Oliver, is in there with Takalani. So I'm good to go. Thanks.
Your mother's got a lot to answer. Our mother's got a lot to answer for the offspring. Anyway, great that you're here, Tom, because some of this is your session. And then what we want to do as well, we want to just revisit where we are and what on this sort of 1 year lap that we've got, and coming down, we've essentially got kind of 2 months coming at us, which is going to be really polishing the TERs, the TOs, the training experience summaries, getting that engineering report looking good, and just getting it really honed down. And then we've got those of you who won't be going for the 2 months, but will be going for the kind of 8-month countdown. So getting yourself really ready, because what I want to do is I want to save as much of June for professional reviews sessions, mock reviews, so that we give you a chance. You put your camera on and you hammer it. You just give us like you do your mock review with us. You tell us you got 15 minutes, show us your slides, show us your best form of you. And what we'll do before then is we will run a presentation skills course as well. So one of the soft skills, which you will get CPD for, is we'll do some pointers. So if you aren't an accomplished stand-up comedian, or you're not used to doing public speaking or impromptu speaking or structured presentations and things, we'll give you some pointers that you can use or discard, and we'll try and get you as ready as you can for your professional review session. So that'll happen towards end of May and in the June place, because you can officially register from about the 15th of June onwards up until the end of August. And we're going to suggest, depending on your readiness, that we might get you going into the sort of the July space there. But it depends. Some of you may really be shrink wrapped and ready to bounce, and we can get you in early. So for me, that's really important. And that means that Friedrich and Tom and Rob and Kim and myself need to start honing in specifically on the people with a 2-month runway ahead of them. The others with the 8-month, you can go to school and learn from the sort of the rapid fire ones, but we really do need to start buttoning down on that. And that's not going to be possible on a whole series of one-on-one sessions. So it's really important that Rob's doing that internally within MTM, but we are able to use the technology so we can get the collective sharing. We can see what each other is saying. Remember that between Kim, myself, and Tom, we all became professionals at very different times in our lives. There's vast differences between some of our ages, etc. So things have changed over time. We're also got very different ways of doing things. So we will give our opinions, but our opinions are not the only opinions. So it's important to always filter that what you're getting from us is just our best views and our experienced views. And what I want to do is I want to get Johan into the conversation as soon as possible, because he is a brilliant assessor, but he will only get involved once he knows with absolute clarity what the route is on the alternative route, what the E17P ruling is, what the ruling is with regards to the level of understanding, which is identified incorrectly, possibly in the Technologists TER, and where that's going to. Tom's working with ECSA closely on that. So there's a hell of a lot happening in the background to try and clarify what's going on. Tom's going to tell you a lot more about that. I'm going to give Tom an opportunity, and Tom then can clarify for the whole group. Rob was concerned last time about this particular clause. Tom spent time with ECSA, and Tom will explain to us what the way forward is. And then what I'd like to try and do is shut up enough to have some general Q&A, so we can get the chats and things, get the questions into the chat, because that's the best place. If we don't cover all the questions, if you get it into the chat, best is to get it into Communicator. That's why I want to show Communicator to you. So without further ado, Tom, I'm going to pause for a second to see if there's anything that you want to just inject at this stage.
Phil, I just think maybe just a note for the academics that we have had some feedback. It's unofficial at the moment from Fran. So that process is moving forward. They have definitely acknowledged that academics teaching engineering programs are doing engineering work. What they are currently working on is just the evidence that would be expected to be seen for each of the outcomes. So let's hope we can get that sooner rather than later. And then the academic NUC2 can also get going on putting their reports together. And some of them, like Cheryl and others, should be on a fast track route also to hit the July-August window. Thanks, Phil.
Tom, that's very good news. That's fantastic, especially for the senior academics that have been doing a huge amount of work the whole way along here, almost sort of without a torch in the dark in some ways, but have just been pressing on as well. So that's exciting for Cheryl and the other academics that are ready. And Tom, without holding this particular session up, maybe what we're going to do in the next session, we'll go back to the breakaway rooms again. And if we can try and get all of the mentors available, we can have a much more focused conversation as what does an academic TER look like, and what is if it's a very, if it's a mature academic, what does an academic TEO look like? What are the nuances in the writing of those things? And we can do the same with the MTM guys, because if we have got clarity, and the same with the SICE. So, okay, thanks, Tom. Mike, Rob, anybody else with anything that you want to say before we get going, or can I kick into the dancing session?
So, Phil, am I going to talk to the TER or the application form in terms of that education evaluation schedule Rob and I have had a conversation with before, when we get to item 5?
I was hoping you could, because
no, I'm just
wanted
checking.
To make sure that...
So you're not wanting us to discuss it now. Let's run through the soft skill session and do the demo of the communicator, and then do the quick position audit, and then I'll come back in and give some feedback on yesterday's session on qualification evaluations and last week's session on all the alternative routes.
Tom, I'm not precious about in which order we do it. If you would like to go now, that's also fine.
So ECSA have acknowledged that table that was giving Rob, I don't know if sleepless nights or grey hair, he's already grey for a while, is misplaced in the actual application. But it is a useful tool when it comes to evaluating somebody's qualification, for them to be able to show how they acquired the knowledge skill set in order to do the work to achieve all of the outcomes. So what we are currently doing with ECSA, we've gone and we've extended the mapping exercise to go way beyond what was originally envisaged. And then I'm going to have a session as sort of the industry honest broker to take ECSA through their own bot policies and documents to show them where the documents contradict each other. So, for example, if you go into E17 Pro, which is the qualification evaluation form, and you go right to the end of that form, there is a table there that contradicts R02 STA, because there it says matric, which is partly what we are discussing with our current group. You require 10 years or 9 and 3 for technician, and 20 and 10 for technologist. It doesn't have any N3 next to it. When you go to the R02 STA, it says matric and N3. And then there's lots of qualifications listed there, or parts of qualifications, which should make the mapping process to get the current group through into the system and just apply for registration. It was very evident yesterday, and I was running the training course on behalf of ECSA with a colleague, a science colleague, that there is a very clear confusion amongst assessors. Remember, those were qualification evaluation assessors, predominantly foreign or non-aligned qualifications. They keep confusing competence, which is a registration process, with knowledge, which is a qualification process. So we did give them quite a substantive, not dressing down, but a lesson in that you can't just do a tick box exercise and approach it on an all or nothing. And there was a general consensus, and Navashni, the head of education at SICE, has acknowledged that there is clearly areas that need to be fixed. What I think we need is I need a session with Fran, Navashni, and Chepang, who's the registration lady, because it's no good talking education with one manager and then the registration manager either has a different interpretation or a different view. So I'm hoping to have that session within the next week, which means by our second week of April, we will definitely have your option A, B, C, or D, and then what to do in A, B, C, or D. So it's all going well, and I think it's going to come out the other end the way we would like it to come out, as opposed to the way that ECSA is applying it at the moment, which is flawed.
Tom, is that it?
Yeah, I mean I did cut and paste, but I can't remember where I saved it. That table that I'm referring to from E17P. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything into a PowerPoint, and then have a voiceover so that somebody who wants to understand what to do and how to do can just put it in play mode, and then they'll hear me talking in the private of their living room or wherever they're having dinner, rather than have to do it 25 times. So that's the plan. And then we'll do the same with ECSA. So the idea is I'll hyperlink everything. And when you run the session, you can just click on the hyperlink and it'll take you to the source document that speaks to that particular item, including all the contradictions. So remember, it's going to be a as it is status, and then with the suggested way forward as we wrap up the process.
Tom, that'll be huge. That'll be fantastic. But please don't send it by email. Please put it into Communicator so that it's there permanently with a link so that everybody can go back to it. Then we can use it. We can bounce conversations off it. And we can also then stick it into Narkili as the app. So we can filter it and search for it quickly. So we've got it as a permanent resource, and we'll upload it in as a link as well. So that's great. That'll be very good. Okay. So
Phil, what I may do before that step is just get one or two, like the Jones Molosani's, Suresh Ramsarup, a couple of others who have intimate Hugh Jeffrey, who's already assisting, to look at it first, because there could well be gaps, because remember, the more views and the more unanswered questions we can answer, the more useful the tool will become. But certainly once it's ready and it's accepted by ECSA as being the gospel according to Tom, then we will definitely upload it. I see Rob's got a hand.
Yeah, Tom, so basically what you're saying at this stage of the game, people filling in the app, using the application form as it stands, must ignore the B18.
Yes, correct. They must ignore the B18 and the EDR on the technician and the technologist. That doesn't exist on the engineer's form. So yes, Rob, ignore that. I'm suggesting that gets used when you evaluate qualifications, not as part of the registration process.
Yeah, look, I think it can be very useful to people when they're filling in their application form, because it's a very good mind jogger in some respects. If they've got something specific they've learned, or some tool that they've used, which is of a high level, just to document it in there, because it can be very useful as a reminder tool.
Yeah, no, Rob, I agree with you. In terms of a tool, it's great what it is. I just think in ECSA have agreed it's in the wrong place. So by all means, let the teams, let the individual mentees use it to be able to work out and to map where they assimilated the knowledge to apply to what they do, but don't get stuck on that EDR form when you should be writing TEOs and TERs at this stage.
Agreed.
Okay, good. Okay, Rob, so I'm glad that we sorted that. Tom, thanks for sorting that out. I appreciate that. I didn't want that sort of a cloud of uncertainty to detract the guys from pressing forward. So that's well done that we've sorted that out. And it'll be great when you've got your working examples and you've got some additional eyes and heads wrapped around it to try and tidy it up. And it's fantastic that you've built this working relationship with ECSA, because Fran's, as you know, she's really in our team and is helping it every way that she possibly can, and with Navashni, etc. So that's really good. Okay, Tom, thanks for that. And you and I can circle back on where we go with that. But it looks like there's nothing holding us from continuing. So let me go back to my slide. Tom, we're good to go. Rob, anything from you, or I don't know if Mike's in the group? Anything from?
So Mike and I spoke a short while ago. He is in now. Yeah, Mike is in. He's just got back from time in the bush. Hello, Mike.
How's it, everyone?
Mike, anything up front that you want to sort of put into the melting pot for today's festivities, or can we get going?
Phil, I think that it's satisfying to hear what Tom has got to say. I think that the progress that he's making with ECSA is very good, and we thank him for that.
Yeah, but behind the scenes, it's Tom's incredibly active at this, and not just Tom. There's Fran and there's lots of people in trying to resolve this, because it's the importance of this is not just the MTM Nook 1 and the MTM Nook 2 kind of thing, is that it has massive implications for the country, and with the identification of engineering work. So what we're doing as the sort of the pioneers in this thing. I don't, you know, if you knew the number of backdoor conversations that happen every single day about this program between Tom, Fran, myself, and a variety of people, you would know the effort that's going in. So it is good, and it is really good that ECSA are accepting, because over the years they've been bulletproof, and they are really showing acceptance that there are gaps, and they are prepared to, you know, come to the party and make amendments and things like that. So that's really good. So thanks, Mike. Okay, I'm going to get into the session for today. Well, I nearly gave you human factors and the cost of human error all over again. And then I suddenly realized that we had done it in, I think, September or whatever. So today I want to talk to you about something that it will probably ring a bell with all of you, behavioral dynamics in construction. And if you can master this, you can master really all kinds of communication and relationship issues. And so there's something that's been going. Now we're going to ask you a few questions. You know, why is understanding behavioral dynamics important in the built environment? I'm going to ask you this at the end. Do you think we take enough notice how this affects us at work or on our projects? Do you think that behavioral dynamics can trigger gender and cultural conflict? So this will come up interestingly. Do you think that it's possible to modify behaviors to achieve better results? And what examples can you recall where behavioral dynamics really got in the way? So we're going to be talking here about kind of human-to-human interaction. And Jack Welch, who some of you may or may not know, but the former CEO of General Electric, is very famous for saying that the secret of our success has been the ability to consistently attract, develop, and retain excellent people. So if you know Jack Welch, you know he also had something called the vitality curve, which wouldn't really work well in South Africa. But what every year, all the managers had to vote for the 10 worst people, 10%, the 10% of the workforce. They had to identify someone who was the least effective, or the least contributory, or the least productive, etc. And then they were ejected from General Electric. So you can do that in America. You wouldn't be able to do that here in South Africa. But so they had this vitality curve, and what it did is it meant that everybody just upped their game. And what it did then also is that on the upper end of it, he paid. There was like a threshold, and if you went beyond this threshold on the bell curve, you earned obscene amounts of money. So what he did is he built like a traffic jam of people on the threshold, so that at any point in time, if he had attrition in his executive layers, he had this traffic jam of hot, vibrant talent, all trying to get across the threshold. And that's how they built it, General Electric, into a very big business. Some of it might be frowned upon in today's world, but certainly in the old baby boomer days of command and control, that worked quite well. So ideally, we need a reliable system or process to somehow consistently identify, select, develop, and retain the right people. So how can we go about this? I'm not sure what MTM uses, or what Sunrail uses, or if Tom's used these in the universities. I'm sure he would have. But the thing that is really, really relevant, and there's a lot of memes on this, is that attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference. And if you can start to manage your attitude in confrontational or stressful environments, you can get just a different set of results altogether. So in this whole area around cooperation, communication, and collaboration with other people, if you can manage your attitude in the space of uncertainty and conflict, you very often will be the winner of the situation. Even if you don't have all of the facts about you, you will be able to manage the argument more rationally than someone who's just throwing all their toys out of their cot. So we don't really have time to do this, but what we used to do when we ran these face-to-face with sort of big workshop sessions, if you think of a manager over the past few years that you know, remember, please, no names, no pack drill over here, and who you believe has failed as a manager, and why do you think they failed? And we would do this on a flip chart, and everybody would throw words up, and they would all think of a manager, and then we would write up all the words: lack of communication, arrogant, rude, a racist, a sexist, not qualified, poor skills, didn't, no knowledge, whatever it was, and you would write them all up, things, and it was without fail. I mean, we did this for years and years and years before technology, and when we were still running big workshop sort of based things. And it was, we've done this with 10 years with UNISA. We ran 650 academics through our academic mentoring programs. We've had the whole of WBHO, the whole of Stefanuti Stocks, the whole of the Denel Armaments Group, 8 companies within Denel before the ANC broke it, and huge companies, the ACOMs, the Hawley Parsons, etc. And what happens every single time is the same result: is we hire people for their skills and their experience, and we fire them for their attitude and their behavior. And that really is the essence of high performance companies versus average companies versus companies that aren't sustainable and don't last, is we spend so much time looking at the CVs of people with skills and experience and where they got their work and where they qualified and all of this sort of kind of thing. And we actually are not measuring potential, because potential doesn't come from skills and experience. Potential comes from attitude and your behavior and your ability to for cognitive adaptability and emotional flexibility and all these sort of kinds of things. So I'm going to spend time today taking you through a model that has really worked very well. And so what happens is over time, what the psychologists have found, and I'm going to talk to you about a particular psychologist just now, is that you find people are always up to their butts in crocodiles in the work environment. And yet they've got everything on paper. They fit the job description, their key result areas, their competence, they've got the right qualifications, they've got the number of years of experience, etc. And yet they are just never coping, and they're drowning in crocodiles. And it's all to do with just the general behavioral style, or their management style, either the way they're managing or the way they're being managed. And it's always down to the environment, and the environment is that space in which you're working. I'm not talking about the environment and climate control and O2 and net zero. I'm talking about the environment in which a person is immersed at work, and what that is. Is that a nurturing environment? Is it a power over? That sort of kind of environment. So, in reality, a vast number of people spend their entire working lives in positions where they're completely unable to mobilize their inherent strengths. And I'm sure many of you will think and know people who just plod along, hate their jobs, and they plod along day after day after day. And it's not because they're not good people. They are just completely unsuited to the environment in which they're in. And so if you can't mobilize your inherent strengths, you'll never ever realize your full potential. And that is a very sad part of people that are forced to take jobs that they just hate. So understanding behavior and understanding behavioral dynamics is a really critical component of how do you get the best out of your people, or if people are not performing or underperforming, is get to understand that it might not be because they slack. They may just be up to their butts in crocodiles because they are stressed. They are permanently, it is triggering they modified what we call a modified behavioral style. In other words, it's their adapted style to the stress stimuli, and you're not getting the best out of them because they're in a partial fight or flight space, and you're just getting everything's coming from the limbic system and the emotional response, which is about fight or flight. And it's not about the rational, cognitive, what is best for the system. It's what is best for my survival. So that's an important thing to understand. And the key to excellent performance is having a large number of personal characteristics that actually fit those required by the job. And some of you old enough will have heard of someone called Dr. John Kotter from Harvard Business School. And this is it sounds like a cliche, but it's amazing the number of people that are not suited for the jobs that they're in. And this is about getting to understand that more. And if you look at the American Society for Training and Development, show that the real success is typically 70 to 80% psychological and emotional, and about only 20 or 30% is made up of your skills and the dependencies on academic learning, etc., etc. So it might not be in these slides. It isn't in these slides, but there's also work done by Jennings, which you might know as the 70-20-10 principle. But and what that really says is that by the time you get to Tom or Mike or Rob's kind of stage in life, is that only 10% of what you do, if 10%, has got anything to do with what you studied. You may have some background, fundamental knowledge and understanding of how the principles of engineering, but you don't use that on a day because you become an executive. You're making very different decisions. You're not working out, dimensions and stresses and things like that. And about 20% will come from what's known as vicarious learning. So it's from your mentors, it's from observing others, it's from coaches, it's from peer-to-peer, peer-to-professional, and it's really getting the wisdom and knowledge out of other people. But the time you get to become expert level, 70% of what you are doing, you've learned the hard way generally, or you've learned through trial and error, and sometimes getting it right, sometimes getting it wrong. So I've talked about this before when we did this, the human factors. Sorry, that's something to happen. Is the repetitive human factors thing. This is probably animated, so it's going to start doing this the whole time. But these are kind of things, if you look at these factors over here, you'll see most of these are behavioral in nature. These are not to do with lack of a qualification or lack of years of experience. Some of it may be number 9, lack of knowledge and skill, could be related to study, academia, etc. Lack of, number 3, lack of needed resources, could be to do with something that you have, which is not necessarily your behavioral. But poor communication, distraction and multitasking, all the others, they're all to do with understanding behavior. So work that was done in about 1928 by Professor William Marston, who was one of the founders of organizational psychology. And they were looking at what made some people high performers and what made others just serial low performers. And at the time, a lot of the research in the book called The Emotions of Normal People, and that's an important word there, what is a normal person? So they were doing psychology over here, and the assumption was that if you were holding down a job and you were working, is that you were a kind of a normal person, because psychology was also a lot to do with people that were not necessarily normal and had all sorts of issues, kind of thing. And this was this study was people that they fitted the kind of characteristics of the so-called normal person. And it came sort of out in between the First World War and the Second World War. And part of the study was based on what made people effective as submariners and sailors and captains of aircraft and tank commanders, because all of these new big weapons had evolved very rapidly in the First World War. And they were looking at ways of identifying officer material so that they had because remember, most of the youth got wiped out in the First World War. So everybody was now looking, how do they restock, the tragedy of the First World War? And could they start coming out of Taylorism and time and motion studies, could they start restocking the future generation with a little bit more of an understanding of what was the potential of individuals? And Marston built this model, okay? And it really looked at, it was as much as they could, it was multicultural, multi-gender, multi-age. They used unqualified people, they used highly qualified people. They used people from as many diverse things. So they had stevedores from the shipyards in Baltimore and other places, and then they also, which is not a really good place to have a shipyard right now, and they had other people that were airline pilots and surgeons, etc. Big diverse group. And what Marston found is that in the work environment, there's this continuum he called the work environment, and on the one side of the continuum, things are antagonistic, which tend to be very much task oriented and hard thinking kind of thing, that you have to get stuff done. And the other end of that continuum was the very favorable environment, which was much more about feelings and relationships and those sort of kinds of things. And then he mapped against that human behavioral response. And on the left-hand side, he had what he called people that remained passive, and also exhibited more introverted or reclusive kind of behavior. And on the right-hand side, he had people that became active and exhibited sort of extroverted or outward behavior kind of thing. And remember that passive is not the same as inactive. So that's an important thing here. So active people mobilize something, whereas passive people remain passive in a given set of stimuli. And so you can see, without being a traffic management engineer, that a quadrant comes out of this very nicely. And this is what was the basis of the theory that became known as DISC: dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance. Many of you would have been DISCed at some point in time, probably by Thomas International. We used to own Thomas International, a franchise in the Western Cape many, many years ago. And this is a very, very good, it's a global product across the world. It's been working for many, many years, and it's extremely useful. And the DISC stands, the D stands for dominance. And the dominance is how you respond to problems and challenges. And so what essentially, if there's a problem or a challenge that arises, people with the high D tend to become active when something is antagonistic and it's challenging. And so those are the dominant people. Those are the people that just, they leap up, they grab their sword, and they just head straight into it, okay? It's how people that are actively engaged in overcoming problems. And then there was the other characteristic on the other end of that, what they call the energy line, is contacts, is how you influence others to your point of view. So you will see these are people that become very active when things are favorable. And so you'll see there, for instance, that when something's happening and then there's something that's pleasant, it's not stressful, it's to do with feelings, it's to do with relationships, it's fun, it's vibrant. Some people, and you will know these people that you work with, they become almost animated, and they become very, very lively and vibrant, etc., etc. Whereas there other people, when things are really tough, tend to take a kind of a leadership role, but they can be quite aggressive and arrogant and dominant, etc., depending on how you view them. So the C word, as we call it, for the dominance people is all about addressing challenge and taking on challenge head on, whereas the C word for the high influence people is all about contacts, making contacts, keeping contacts, those sort of things. And on the other end of the energy line, you've got people that even when things are very favorable and everyone and the high I's are partying and going dilly and organizing the braai, you've got others that just remain passive. They just keep doing their thing quietly, and they just walk and they mingle and they chat and they network, and they don't want the limelight and they don't want the show and all the lights, etc. And that's what Marston called the S factor for steadiness. And so steadiness is around stickability, loyalty, dependability, been there, seen there, done it, don't like change, etc. So it's all to do, those people is all about a measure of how you respond to the pace of change of an environment. So some people love lots of change, some people hate lots of change, and they really want things to be consistent and steady and dependable, and that the sun must come up at the same time every single day, because that's the way they would like it. And then you've got the last of the quadrants, is where people remain passive even when things are very antagonistic. And so this tends to be those who, how they respond to the rules and procedures that are set by others. And very often you'll find very academic inclined engineers fall into this space over here, and certainly accountants, a lot of lawyers fall into this space, because it doesn't matter how antagonistic something becomes. There's a rule or a procedure that defines what you do next. You don't have to think about it, and you don't have to grab your sword and go and do something challenging. Somewhere there's a policy or a procedure or a rule or a code of practice that's going to dictate what we do here. So you don't have to go and become do a whole lot of stuff. You can just remain passive and you just reach for the rule book. So at a big picture, all of us have each of these characteristics, but it's the combination of the characteristics in our profiles that really defines how other people see our behavior, which is what we call observable behavior. And it also defines the real us, which is the real, the end. So the observable behavior, also known as the mask, it's what people see, how you respond. And very often it's how you are performing in order to survive in your work environment, and it's not the real you. So I'm sure you will find, or you will know people who are very dominant and assertive, et cetera, in the work environment in order to cope in the work environment. But when they get home, they are quite subservient, and they don't necessarily try and be the command and controller of their family or their friend groups, et cetera. But something changes in the work environment, and they become this like a banshee in the work, and vice versa. Okay, so what does all this mean? So let's look at where conflict comes in teams in the business environment. And the first one is, what are the different characteristics focus on? And the one thing that you can see immediately here where conflict can come in is, if there's a stressful environment, what will people focus on? So the high Ds will focus on grabbing the power. They want to take the power in the group, in the situation, and they want to overpower whatever is causing the challenge, okay? Whereas the high influence people, if something's stressful, they want to know who are the people involved, so we can sit down and have a little chat and a powwow and have a meeting and sort out who are all the people, so we don't hurt anybody, we don't upset anybody, et cetera, where that's the last thing the D people are worrying about, upsetting people. And then the S people are going to be thinking, where have we done this before? Why did we even change things, etc.? Let's just slow the whole process down. And sometimes they also known as the sort of the hidden handbrake of the corporate world, is they will do everything they can without fingerprints to bring everything back to a steady state pace that they can manage and think at, kind of thing. And the C's will be looking at the situation and thinking, okay, we've got a rule for this somewhere. Somewhere there's a policy, a procedure, or something that's done, or we need to write one quickly, which will handle the situation. So you can see in those environments, just looking at the one thing, you've got the ability to get stress and disharmony happening in a team. And then if you look at the different way people communicate under pressure. So in a pressurized environment, the D people will just start telling people what to do. There's no negotiation. You know, you get if they want your opinion, they'll give it to you, and you just don't have it. They just tell. They're a command and control kind of style. Whereas the high influence people will do their best to try and sell you their view of the world, because they don't want to tell you what to do and become unpopular. Remember, they want to be loved, they want to be liked, they want to keep contact with you. It's about relationships, etc. So they will try and convince you that they've got the best way of doing it, but they won't upset the relationship by telling you and being confrontational. And there's always those people in our different teams and groups, and all of us will know these people who actually don't do any telling and selling, and they just remain silent when the pawpaw is hitting the fan around us. And these are the people that listen. And they take in all the facts and they gather the information, and they don't make any rush decisions or spontaneous decisions, etc. And it's because they're listening and assimilating. And very often the high Ds and the high Is will assume that they're either stupid or they don't understand the situation. And that's not the fact at all. What they're doing is they're giving everyone a chance to just express themselves and blow off steam. And they're kind of listening to see what's going on. And a good leader will always make sure that the silent people have an opportunity, and you give them an opportunity to communicate. So, for instance, there are people in the Whitby group and people in MASELULEKANE who, if you get them on a team session or you put them on the spot and you ask them to do a little video, etc., they are very, very uncomfortable with it. They don't like the limelight at all. Give it to a high I and they'll quickly go and put on a new dress or a hat, because they just can't wait for the opportunity. But there are those that don't like the limelight and they want to listen, but you give them the mobile app, and next thing they're an award winner, because they're just brilliant. They come into their own because they don't have to be out there in front of everybody doing it, etc., etc. And then there are those people that don't do any of this. They just sit down with their notepad and they just write notes. And every one of us will know that those people in the different groups, you sit down at a meeting, the first thing that comes out is a pen and a paper. and because they want a record. And when it all goes pear-shaped, they want to make sure that they've got a copy. And the really pedantic ones will have a piece of carbon paper, or they'll photostat it, and they'll have a spare notebook, and they'll have one in a file, and they may even take a photocopy and put one in the gun safe at home, because they want to make sure that they have got backup to this conversation, which the high Ds and the high Is will forget, because it's energy that's liberated in an instant, because either to take command and control or to sell my idea to you, whereas the Cs and S's will remember and they'll come back and haunt you. So from a management style, very different. The Ds can be very autocratic. They're tough people to work for. My wife and I are both Ds, so we are almost impossible when there's if we have two completely different divergent points of view, because we just overpower each other the whole time. But it's worked for 35 years. So autocratic bosses are really, really tough. It's my way or the highway. It's a command and control kind of thing. And that's because their focus is on power and their communication style is tell. And if you know that that's your style, and you know what modification of behavior is, you can become an incredibly good leader by just modifying at appropriate times. Is are very democratic. They want the collective input. They take time to have a kind of a conversation, get as many views and points as. S's will generally try and invoke some sort of procedure so that there's like a logical start, middle, and an end to the process, and maybe a set of minutes or an agenda that needs to go out. So they will try and come back, and they'll try and bring sense to the management style and make sure it looks professional. It's all very well done. And the C's, interestingly enough, in the research, the C management style can be unpredictable. It's either overly rule-bound, or it can become sort of paralyzed by an analysis and slow to decision make, etc. But gather huge amount of analytical data on it, but don't have necessarily that sort of the D factor to pull it through. But they can also have, so the C and the D sometimes they masquerade. Interesting. I won't go into what we call blue zoning. What motivates the different characteristics? I'm rushing through this because this is generally like a half morning session. But if I look at the motivators, so what drives the different characteristics? So D's, tangible goals. If you want to get a D doing something, just give them a stretch target or a mountain to climb or a sales target to hit, and boof, let them go. Don't tell them how to do it. Let them go and do it. That's what they are. They are built, they are driven and fueled by challenge. So give them tangible goals. So that's why good salespeople generally have high Ds, because they just keep battering away until they get a success story. High Is are motivated by recognition. So if the worst thing you can do to a high I is reject them, if they feel rejected, that's a demotivator. That's the worst thing you can do. So pat them on the back, stroke their egos, make them feel good, give them compliments, be nice to them, and they're like an old Land Rover. They'll do 250 kilometers on the sniff of an oil rag just on recognition. So that's really important if you've got those people in your group. S's like group inclusion. So the characteristics on the right, active characteristics, like to achieve something, either a goal or recognition. The characteristics on the left like to be affiliated with something. And so S's like to be included in a group that's coherent, it's winning, it's successful, there's happiness, they're going along the same way. And so they feel, there's this feeling of sense of belonging, etc. And C's are very comfortable and motivated by being surrounded with really good policies, procedures, things to refer to. And they like to be able to bring anything that becomes chaotic or complicated, they can just bring order back, and they can control it with rules and regulations and things like that. And then fears. What are the different fears? And so you can imagine if Ds want to achieve something, the thing that they hate most is failure. So this is what keeps Ds going, and very often to the own detriment of the company, is they've taken the wrong direction, but they will keep going in the wrong direction because they fear failure, even though it's the wrong decision. They cannot admit to the board or to their shareholders or to the market or to their mom. They cannot admit that they took the wrong road and they should not have taken the company in this direction, and they've collapsed the company. because they don't like failure, and they believe that with their strength of character and their force of nature, etc., they will overcome everything. And very often the money runs out, and boof, the whole thing falls down all around them. So a very important thing for very dominant people is to understand sometimes is you have to self-reflect. And am I doing something wrong? And do I need to get some sort of thinking in here? And very often the best people to go to is not the high influence people, because they'll just want a hat, a brooch, and a party. You go to the S's and the C's, and you go and get some, because they've been listening. And they're going to ask questions like why and how and when and all those things that the D's and the I's don't think about. And so the D's and the I's just think about what, where all the when and the how and the whys are coming from the left-hand side. So don't reject high I's. It devalues them, and you can always see if someone is demotivated somewhere along the line. They've been rejected. If you've got your kids at school, they've been called something at school, you know, a young kid with glasses or something's been called 4 eyes or whatever, and that you probably find the ones that handle it are the high D's, because they'll just smack you between the eyes with a spade, and the ones that go into depression will be the ones that don't like being rejected by the peer group and the community, etc., etc. S's fear insecurity, so change, uncertainty, conflict within an environment. Same with the C's, they hate conflict. And that's why C's will try to remove conflict from the business environment by having rules, policies, procedures in place. So the C's and the S's, they don't like the insecurity of where there isn't something written down, or that there isn't a known next step, or there's an uncertainty. So when companies do mergers and acquisitions, one of the things you have to be very careful of is, because of the uncertainty, and some people are going to lose their jobs, or they're going to lose their job titles, or they're going to lose their undercover parking or whatever, is you must make sure that you deal with the C's and the S's very carefully, because they will be in a level of uncertainty, and there will be some uncharted space where there may not be policies and procedures, etc., and they're expecting conflict, and they know that the conflict and the uncertainty is going to be dominated by the D's. And so this causes huge stress. So this is the, you know, when you've got mergers and acquisition, or you've got downsizing, or you've got something that's unpleasant, you need to make sure the C's and the S's are warned as early in advance as you can warn them, so that they can ruminate on it and think about it and deal with it. Don't just drop it on them and expect them to be able to handle it like a high D would, kind of thing. So that's a really important part about leadership and development and things. And then sort of getting towards the end, as a force of character, D's will sort of just force their way and they think that that's great. If you, one of the other characteristics, it comes across as rude, blunt, arrogant, but the D's think that that's great. They think this force of character, this bulletproof nature, the fact that I can headbutt a concrete wall day after day after day, but the rest of the planet thinks, you know, doesn't think the same of them. The I's will generally mobilize their personality, so it's all about the jokes, and they're generally very well dressed. They're generally very image conscious, and they will, you know, tell jokes, and they will try and mobilize this intense sense of personality just to get the energy right, kind of thing. S's will always ask why, because they'll want experience, they'll want to know that. So make sure that you always answer the why question for S's. And the C's will engage know-how. They will have read the book, they will know the rules, they will know all of the bits and pieces, and they will expect that if there's in an uncertain area, is that they're going to engage their knowledge of all of the rules and the policies and the procedures, and so they're good ones to have if you need that as an answer. So questions to answer: the D's want to know what must I get done. Don't tell me how, why, and who to do it with. Just give me the what, and I'll go off and do it. The I's not that interested in the what, the more about the who's involved, who's in the team, who's gonna organize the burry rolls, etc. And there's a whole lot of stuff that goes around the party as opposed to just getting this job done. S's want to know why. If you're changing anything, they want to know why change something that isn't broken. We didn't do it like this before, or we did that before and it didn't work. Why are we going to do that again? And they've got memories like an elephant. So make sure that you answer the why for the S's. And the C's are going to want to know how. If you are doing something that is not written down, how are you going to do it? And before I do it, write it down for me and give it to me and sign it. and then I know how, because now it's a new instruction. Then I'm happy with it. So I'm not going to go into the graphs. There's a whole technique to learning to read these graphs, but what these things do is that, you call them the mask or the adapted style, and that's how you survive in the work environment. And then you have your real me, the natural style, which is the real you. And you'll see those are two very different sort of profiles. They might look similar, but there's some differences over there. And what this is essentially telling you on the left-hand side is this person becomes very dominant in the work environment, the adapted style, because they have to survive. So maybe they were made a manager or a sales manager or a production manager, and they on a day-to-day basis are having to make tough decisions. They're having to discipline staff. They're having to meet production deadlines. And so they're having to do things which is modifying their behavior or their adapted style, whereas the real them is below the energy line. They're actually a low D, and they don't like doing that. So that person over time will experience a certain amount of occupational stress, because they will not like always making tough calls, etc., etc. The rest of the profile reasonably similar, but on the dominant side you can see this modified, and you'll see some people have a U shape, and the other side is like an N shape, and you will know that those people are completely modified in the work environment, which is then they are going to be the most stressed and they generally don't last very long in those jobs. So I'm not going to go too much of this because I want to get through some other stuff. The emotions are very related to this, how we are very quick to anger. For the high Ds, the high Is have a very high trust of others. They tend to overshare private information, confidential information, because they trust others. So high Is always really overshare stuff that they shouldn't, personal stuff or business stuff. And they do that because they trust others and they think everyone else is the same. And they very often get themselves into really deep water. The S's, they tend to not be emotional. They don't really show their emotions very highly. You normally find that nurses and doctors that work in kind of hospices and cancer clinics and sort of near end life of hospitals, etc., they have to be high S's. Otherwise they get sucked into. So D's and I's cannot work in those very, very, very tough human places to work. And that's where, when they do behavioral profiling of those people have to have almost no emotional connection to the thing. They just need to be able to carry on, do it, and not get too attached to anybody. So really, when we engaging people, we need to have a very good combination of hard issues and soft issues, skills, knowledge, ability, performance, sort of intelligence, the various different intelligences, and then the soft issues, which is our behavior, our values, interests, motivations, dislikes. And it's a really worthwhile investment, organizations, in just getting to understand this a lot more. You can map teams. You can do what's known as an HAA or human job analysis, and you can see where people fit into teams and where they don't fit in. You can look at what a job looks like, and then you can look at what the people in that team and where conflict is. You can predict conflict in teams. So I'm just going to quickly. Okay, so I want to finish off with some questions. And I'd like anybody to please come in and answer these questions. So I'm just going to go through it. In fact, what I want to do is I want to stop so I can read this. Okay, so I'm going to try and find if I can see everyone's faces. No, how do I do this? Tom, how do I see my slides and if there's any questions? Okay, you'll have to put a hand up if you want to quit. The first question I want to ask from anybody is, why is understanding behavioral dynamics, with the spelling error, important in the built environment or in the engineering construction space? So let's have that conversation. Let's see who's up for answering that. Why is understanding behavioral dynamics in the very tough engineering construction space important? Any questions? Any answers? Otherwise, I'm just going to pick on someone. Let's pick on Trevor Helens. Trevor, if you're there, why do you think understanding behavioral dynamics, after everything I've just said, is really important as a manager, let's say?
I think it's, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
No, just in a nutshell, I think it's important to know your colleagues well so that you know how to treat them in the different work in your environment.
Good. Okay. Cool bananas. Thank you.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
That's it's good. It really is good. And do you think that we do enough of that? Do you think we make enough effort to understand each other's behavioral differences?
Probably not in today's day and age. But yeah, I think if we had to, that you'll probably get a lot more productivity done.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Drew.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
man.
All right. So another question is, do you think we take enough notice of how this affects us at work or on projects? So an exercise we used to do, so I'm just going to tell you about this, is we used to get towards the end of a year on a program, and this might be something interesting to do now, and you can just think about it for coming back next time, and one of you can give us feedback, is if you just observe humanity on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not talking about even just work environment, just observe humanity on a day-to-day basis, and notice how very often a very acrimonious situation is developing, which is actually quite unnecessary. And some examples are, an obvious one is that someone's at a checkout at a Checkers or Pick and Pay or Mr. Price or whatever it is, or over here Waitrose or Sainsbury's or etc. And they've forgotten a tin of beans, and so they've like got this whole big pile of veggies that are going through the thing, etc. And then they suddenly think, oh, I've forgotten some of the beans, and they just say to the teller, sorry, I'm just going to go rush off over there and get it. And it's going to take maybe 30 seconds for them just to rush back. But there's very often someone in the queue who just strips their mud and just loses it completely, because they're going to wait another 30 seconds because someone, and so humanity just loses itself, and you get someone. Now, that's probably someone who's a high D, who's just not, it certainly wouldn't be a high I or a high S. It could also be a high C, because that's like stupid to forget something on your shopping list. Why don't you shop with a shopping list? If you had a shopping list, you would have checked that you didn't forget the beans and you would be fine. Now you're inconveniencing all of us because you don't use a shopping list. And a high D would be having similar sort of kinds of thoughts, that why are you making me wait where I've in the queue, I've, got this far and now I've got to stop because you're taking control. That's typically what happens. And so what I want to suggest to you is, and you find the same things, that people at petrol stations queuing up to get petrol, and someone goes in to get cigarettes or a chocolate, and meanwhile they should leave and vacate the area, and someone strips their mud again. On a day-to-day basis, if you are cognizant of the impact of human behavioral dynamics on each other, you can start to see and reflect on your own behavior in stressful situations, and it'll come back at you where you see that sometimes what you do is inappropriate, the way you respond, and then you can start to self-correct. And so understanding behavioral dynamics is very powerful for a self-correction, self-coaching kind of opportunity, where you may not be getting the best result every time you go to a certain meeting with a certain grouping of people and you think it's all their fault. And the moment you own your behavior and your response to the environment, you will find you will start to shift, and you'll get more and more success out of those environments, because you're no longer going to be either triggered or you're no longer going to trigger them. And that's mainly what happens in conflict, is this whole thing. That's why I go to the next one there. Do you think behavioral dynamics can trigger gender and cultural conflict? And so let's see if anybody's got an answer on that one, because I was just leading into the story, and I see someone's got a hand up. In the corner there has got a hand up. Go in the corner.
Hi. Yes, I think they do. Okay, where was that? The slide with the questions. Yes, but I do think they do trigger gender and cultural dynamics from they do, because mostly in our worlds, people are from different cultures, right? So something could mean something different in another culture, and things like small things such as dress, where you dress, hair, for instance, etc. These are small things that could or maybe could be seen as not matter, but they can lead to small comments. A colleague can comment on something, then which is actually, they actually think it's a tiny bit, but in the cultural perspective, it's something big. Yeah, so they do.
So that was well said, and that's exactly what you often find is that there's conflict between some people in a work environment, and it's very easy to put it down to that it's gender-based conflict or it's culture-based conflict, where in fact it's probably not. It's probably behavioural-based conflict, and in a melting pot like South Africa, where we have this past, it's too easy to put it down to gender and culture, and sometimes it's really just not showing respect to someone else's point of view or their interpretation of something. So it's really quite interesting. The research around behavioral dynamics is completely cross-cultural. So all the tests and all the validations that have been done with the Psychometrics Committee in South Africa, and as I said, Shelley and I used to own this the license for Thomas International in the Western Cape. We ran it for many years before we started our knowledge management consultancy, and it is definitely the source of a lot of gender-based conflict and cultural conflict, which is just a lack of mutual respect and respecting that someone else's behaviors and the way you communicate with them is different. And it's not necessarily about having to understand the other person's culture or their gender differences, but it's respecting that there is a difference and that you don't let the difference become a source of conflict or differentiate or to divide you, kind of thing. So, but it takes an element of emotional intelligence to do that. So there's a whole part of this course, there's a whole thing around how you develop that emotional intelligence, etc. But thanks, Ndakona, it's well said. So then coming into the next part of the question, so to ask everyone, do you think it's possible to modify behaviors to achieve better results? So let's have someone there. Do you think that humans can modify their behavior to achieve a better result? So there's Nadine. Yes, Nadine, go.
Hi, Phil. Hi, everyone. Yes, I do think that it is possible to adjust our behaviors to achieve better results. As you just said in your example as well, when we can reflect and in certain situations and recognize those behaviors in ourselves that we're not liking or we don't really want to portray, then we can address it and do something different in future. And we can also take that time to understand the people that we're dealing with, our employees, our colleagues, our teammates, our families, our friends, or whoever, and understand what is coming from them and what is coming from us, and then adjust the way in which we respond to it, I think.
Absolutely, Nadine. That was well said. Yeah, 100%. So the one of the big things that's really important about being a good mentor, and to all of you who are mentors, one of the gifts you can give to your candidates is playing the role of observer. And the role of observer is to teach your mentee that they have this a really important attribute of a human is they have the ability to reason, and they have freedom of choice, and that's an important thing for someone to get if they're behaving inappropriately and getting a poor result out of thing, is when you have kind of a crossover between mentoring and coaching with that individual, and you ask them about areas where they're struggling at work or struggling with a customer or struggling with a client or a contractor or whatever, and you drill down into that, and then you try to understand where is that conflict coming from, and then you get them to take ownership of their part of it, and then you lead them through this journey, this sort of coaching and mentoring journey, which is that they have the power to reason. That's their brain. So their prefrontal cortex, which has evolved over 250,000 years has given them the ability, not like a dog, not like anything else, which is sort of behaves purely from an emotional response kind of thing. They have the power of reason, and they can analyze the situation. They can interpret the situation. They've got attention. They've got a whole lot of things that they can apply, and they can actually then use the sort of the power of choice and the freedom of choice to make a better decision on the way they're handling that. And as a mentor coach with a mentee who's just stuck with conflict and ineffective movement forward in their work environment, the mentor plays that the classical role is not telling them what to do, but getting them to come to their own realization of what could they do differently to achieve a better result. And that is when the individual begins to get mastery of their behavior and understand that this whatever the behavior is, this over dominant or this over need for listening and being part of a collective team, etc., or this over need to write everything down or have a rule that dictates everything, or the need to be loved and liked and given recognition, indiscriminate recognition at every opportunity, which is actually you don't deserve. The moment you can impart that onto your mentee, you give them the ability to start to soar, because they now have the gift of self-correction, and that is where people can really begin to get better and better and better. So good response, Nadine. That was well done. Okay, I'm not going to carry on with the questions too much more. I want to go into a bit more of the session. So let me close that down and let me go back into the group. So that was a whirlwind tour of behavioral dynamics. It's actually a much longer session, but are there any questions? Does anybody have anything they want to ask me before I go into CHQ and quickly take you through the communication aspects? Voter. I thought Voter wasn't going to be here. Was it Henk? Sorry, go Voter.
No, my plans changed, so I made a plan to visit. What
well done.
Incredible session. I think in our engineering industry, we are just result-orientated and detailed persons, and we don't spend enough time on the person itself. You can work 10, 15, 20 years with a person and you don't know him. So my question to you is, I'll have to speak to Mike about it, but I think in my concern, in my department where I look after some of the regional officers, this is needed to get to our goals as well. We don't pay enough attention. So this is the second best or the best session I've heard, because it goes hand in hand with mentoring. And it's something we don't pay attention to. So Phil, yes, you said it's actually a more morning session or even a day session. I think this is for me very important in helping with the teams and going the way forward, because we get so stuck down that we sit not with the right people, or we don't know how to work with the behavior that we receive from them. And this was just an eye-opener for me. So thank you for this.
That's a pleasure, and that's why I chose this one, because as engineers, it's one of the things we very often don't get exposed to. So we get exposed to all of the technical stuff over and over and over, and we don't spend enough on the kind of, let's call it the soft skills and the understanding of each other. So, and I can tell you, Chili and I did it for years in the Western Cape before we started the knowledge management and the mentoring business, and we used it for years as a tool as well. And the ability to transform team dynamics but just building an understanding of each other and looking at understanding, because you can there's a lot you can do with it. It really is quite important, and it's a wonderful self-discovery, and it's a good team building process, because you're not all climbing ropes or going through the mud and doing something that is spontaneous and it's in a moment and you have a couple of dops afterwards and a chop and then it's all over kind of thing. That does nothing for teams other than a memory of an event. But understanding each other and understanding each other's what we call stress profiles, and understanding each other, and where you work with the different dynamics of different people in teams, and looking at the nature of the job, and what does what they call the HJA, the human job analysis, what is the environment of the job, and who will do well in this environment and who won't do well, and how do you bring the team to address the dynamics of the job, as opposed to just getting the the various people just responding in their modified stance, and their modified behavior is, remember, that's not the real them. So the real them is not being, their own real inherent strengths are not being mobilized, because they are being forced into the adapted or the modified state or the mask, whichever one term you want to use, and they have no inherent strengths there. That's just their modified behavior to cope. It's a coping mechanism. So thanks for the positive feedback, Voter. We can do more. There's a lot more that we can do. We can roll some other bits and pieces out. But any other questions on the kind of the behavioral dynamics aspect? No other questions there. Okay. All right. So what I want to do is I want to quickly talk about how we work as a group of mentors, as well as with internal mentors and external mentors. So with Rob, within, and the senior people within NTM, how you can help the candidates getting together, getting to this kind of the 2-month window or the 8-month window, and we start to have a look at stuff. Now, if it all happens on a one-on-one basis, we're going to run short of time. So we need to start to build it into a kind of a collective area. So I just want to go back to, I'm just going to go into, I've logged in here as a mentor. Okay. So can you all see Tom, can you see my platform, or Louise, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see CHQ
okay.
Phil.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Okay, so I'm logged in as a mentor, and I'm in MASELULEKANE. So this is my profile over here. The first thing I immediately see is that Communicator's been busy. There's six new communications over there. So for those of you who have missed all of my little cryptic clues, this is something we've been trying to get going for a couple of weeks, and we've got it going now, and it'll start to improve rapidly. But Communicator over here now has been designed as a way of collectively sharing, so that we can put a link, a document, something that over here, that it remains in the thread and it's easy to come to. Because as you will know, we've got a mobile app for the Naukili, which is the social learning app kind of thing, but it's different. It hasn't been integrated into this yet, which will happen the next couple of months. So I wanted to create somewhere where we had a collaborative platform which wasn't email and WhatsApp, which is then very unstructured. So I wanted something. So I just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable. And if I go down, I can see I'm connected to all of these people now, so I can trigger. So if I want to have a private conversation with any of these people, I can do that. But if I'm going to do that with everybody, I'm going to run short of time. And I also am very limited on understanding your world. So I can help with running the show, and I can help with giving you a sort of a high-level input on the exit procedures and the right TRs, etc., etc. But I can't get down into the nuance of your business. That's going to have to come from people like Tom, Friedrich, and Rob, and to a certain extent Mike, and maybe Basil and some of the other senior people in your organization who can help the guys turn it into an engineering TER kind of thing. One of the concerns that Kim and I have is that reading some of the reports is that, and it's the reason that Johan panicked, and it's the reason maybe that this thing that Tom's busy clarifying with ECSA is actually quite important as a subject matter. And what I'm going to say now, and this is not in any way meant to be offensive, but it's a very real thing, because I want you to be well prepared for ECSA. And you need to know what you're up against. You need to start to think about talking like you understand engineering principles. And it's been, for the 20 years I've been doing this, very consistent feedback year on year to everybody that is applying with the traffic management sort of thing into ECSA, 50% rejected. And it's because they are very focused on the measurement and monitoring side, and they don't spend enough time showing how they understand the principles of engineering. And so that is something, and I've made a note to Calvin, and Kim's come with another conversation. And the power of the communicator is that I can see Kim's point of view and she can see mine, because no two engineers are going to give you the same way of doing it. And then you as the candidates can extract what you like out of the different styles. But it does mean that we need to start communicating in a common place. So what I can do is I can go into Calvin here, and so for the mentors that haven't used it, I can either view Calvin, see the summary over here, or I can go into Calvin. And Calvin, I hope I got your permission over here, but I'm going to go into Calvin over here. And I've logged out. Shit. Sorry, it's timed me out. I just need to go back in again. So I can go in, and I can go into Calvin over here and have a conversation with him. So could you just do a refresh?
So Phil, just yes. Phil, are you in the mentors login?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the top right-hand side there, I'm Philip Mentor.
Okay, thank you.
So now I've logged into. So Tom, if you scroll down on your Tom Mentor, you should be connected to almost all the same mentees that I am. So if I go down now, I can see everything to do with Calvin. I can see Calvin's goal quest over here. I can see, I can go into Calvin's goals if I want. I can go into Calvin's journals. I can see all the bits and pieces. I can see Calvin's got some goals going, etc. I can have a long note. And then I can see on the right-hand side here, and I can see Calvin's talking to me over here, and I need to respond to this. And so what I then realized is I actually want other mentors in this conversation as well. So Calvin then say, what needs to be done? So then I had a conversation with them. We had a separate conversation on WhatsApp, and I said, please put it into CHQ. And so what happens is I'm worried that we're going to lose the thread of conversations over here, because this is between me and Calvin. And at the moment, no one else sees it. So this is something I want to explore with you. Is I believe that in these programs, the mentors need to see each other's comments. At the moment, it's been designed that it doesn't contradict POPIA and GDPR, etc. That my personal conversation is separate to Tom's conversation, etc. And I'm of the opinion that I should be able to see Calvin's other mentors' notes over here so that we can do that. So what I looked at is, what will that do internationally where everyone's neurotic about not sharing stuff, etc., etc. So that's why we built the communicator. So I just want to show you that I have that ability. I can go in, I can have I can add a conversation note here, which is to do with goals and capabilities, or I can add a conversation note this side, which is to do with journaling, and it's to do with the actual, do I think Calvin's on track or not on track, etc., etc. And so here we've got Calvin's got a date. It's not yet specified, so we need to get a date in there. Is when are you planning to register? So I can see you've got 2 months left or something. So there's a couple of things we can do with the mentees. We can update. But what's happening is that the mentors, if I go through the whole of the back end and I look at it from a global perspective, the mentors are not engaging on here as much as they should be. So I think all the mentors are, like everybody, hell of a busy. And some of the candidates are getting frustrated that there's not enough engagement. So I've put a note to Tom, is I want to have a mentor session, and I want us to go through this and agree some level of capability so that we see what's getting on over here. So I'm going to go back out of here. I'm going to go back to my profile. So I'm not staying in Calvin's profile over here, because in an ideal world, there would be a mentor that really understood traffic management, and they would be linked to Calvin, and they would have time, and it would be part of their job description, and they would just spend time with Calvin and answering his questions. But I'm not seeing that happening, because Calvin's asking, and a lot of other people, Justin and Aaron, etc., Brendan, asking questions directly of me. And I am limited in my ability to interpret your work environment. I can help you with some stuff. So the communicator is an attempt. So if I go into the communicator over here, no, sorry, I'm going to go back. Okay, I'm going to go here. So here's the communicator. So I can see everyone. So I can have, if I want, a private chat with anyone over here, and only me and that person can have that private chat. So I've still got an ability to over here, but I don't necessarily have to go into their profile. I can just have a private chat over here with them. So if I want to go and have a private chat with Celestine, I can click on Celestine, and then I can have a private chat directly. No one else can see that. That's me and Celestine having a chat. I can add a link, I can add an attachment, etc. if I just want to have a private chat with Celestine. Or I can go to Celestine as an org admin, or I can go to Teams here. And so this has been set up so that we have got collaborative learning opportunity over here. So this is where I set up something and I send something to the mentors only. And I'm not going to open that up just in case Tom's told me where to get off. But here's the entire organization. So this won't have any F words in it. And I'm going to go in there, and this is where now. So you'll see in here, the grants now. So this is new. Grant's posted something. Nadine's posted something. So there you guys rock. Emma's posted something. There you guys. Rob's gone. So you guys have done well. I haven't even had a chance to have a look at this. So we need to, now we can go in here. Brendan's there. So what you saw a little bit earlier on is Calvin posted something. I gave an example in here of my way of approaching a TER, and I try to give a little bit of a value proposition model over here to use. Remember, this comes from Phil, it's not necessarily the best way. And then I gave Calvin did an example, and it was good, but I felt that there was a little bit of unnecessary fluff in there, and I know that we are limited for words. And so in my own Heidi brutal way, I said, I think there's maybe another way of doing it. And I'm hoping that Calvin took that in the best possible light. And so I gave an example of another way of writing all Calvin's information over here, a little bit shorter, a little bit more detailed. And then what I did is I tried to show Calvin a lot of this is to do with your own internal technology. It's to do with moving things around, and it's about saving money. And it's about the expensive cost of equipment and all that sort of kind of thing. ECSA assessors are not interested in that. They're not worried about if you're saving money. They're wondering about what are you doing that's have an engineering outcome, saving lives, making roads safer, reducing accidents, etc., etc. So I try to write that in a way. And so the last sentence over here, what I tried to do in my own structural engineering way is I was trying to introduce an engineering conversation. So Rob and everybody else, this is where we need to try and inject something that deals with that validation, that long acronym that Tom's got, which is where you have to show that you really understand the basic principles. So I said here, through a careful analysis of speed over distance and taking into account the horizontal and vertical curves of the N3 toll road. So I'm trying to introduce here the concept that you're bringing in an understanding of the speed over distance and how that impacts the design of the horizontal and vertical curves and the intersections, etc. I was able to save expensive equipment costs whilst also achieving the intended reduction in speeds and loss of life. There's an engineering outcome. It's not just about saving money. There's an engineering outcome there, and you would get points for that because you are showing a fundamental understanding of the principles of engineering, etc. So to everybody that's in here, so then I got Calvin said, okay, it's good advice. And then I've got a whole lot of other stuff going here. So Kim went in and did a very different approach to me, which is brilliant because she's got her own way of doing things and she used a lot more of Calvin's stuff. But I'm hoping that the banter between Kim and I is going to give Calvin more meat to braai with and just to start to hone the way he's dealing with it. So then Brendan's come in and he's got something and he's got into it. So he's got a document there which we can go into, and Kim's then having a look and she's going to have a look at it and upload it, etc. So what I'm seeing here is that what I was hoping to see is that this is not an email. It's not lost in WhatsApp. We can get it back over here. So in the very near future, we'll have keys and tags and searches and things like that. But this is where I haven't even read some of this. Rob's saying over here, so I need to go through Rob's points over here. Apologize for that. Okay, so Rob, sorry, buddy. I haven't had a chance to have a look at this, but I know now that I know it's here. So here, Emma's gone and had a go.
Phil, sorry,
Yeah.
can I just? How do we reply to a specific comment? So it's not a reply function like an email or a WhatsApp. It's a string communication.
So at the moment it's a string. We're going to put in a quote response. So if you want to go to one over here, it's not there at the moment. I've already sent the DevOps to Jason. You will click on here. So
I think that might make it easier, because sometimes if it's a while between the question and the response,
absolutely,
it's hard to link it back to whose comment you are responding to. So
Tom, 100%. So what I've agreed with the dev guys is we don't want to reintroduce the threaded chat that we have in Naukili, which is will become part of CHQ. So over here, you'll be able to respond to a quote, but what you'll also have very soon is you'll be able to search against Emma or search against a keyword, and then it'll give you just those posts, etc. So it's evolving as we go. So at the moment, it's going to be a little bit of scrolling. Very soon, you will have the ability to respond to a particular quote or a particular comment or post over there. But and so Nadine's got busy. That's great. So what I want to ask the mentors is we need to start to get busy here, because what I'm hoping is with the 2-month time frame is we can accelerate the kind of the collective thinking of the candidates who really want to do the July intake submission, and we can get things going, because I think that's going to be the best way. If we're trying to achieve it all individually, one-on-one, we're not going to get the collective learning going. So and then in here, so as not to expose the mentors, I've said to the mentors, we really need to get together and have a chat. So we will then have a conversation. So what this gives me and Tom and Rob and Mike and everybody, it gives us the ability to express where we've got concerns, or we're struggling, or we're frustrated, without it detracting from the whole group. And we've got a safe place to go. But we've also got entire organization where we can share stuff. And then, you know, as things grow out and as other people join, we can do other things over here. So this is just how it's structured right now. So I've seen we've used up our time. I want to ask if anybody has any questions on how to use this. So I see Grant, well done, Grant. Grant's put something up there. Brendan's put something up. That's great. So let me go. So that was really what I wanted to show. I think I'm not going to go into the mobile apps so much at the moment, because I think this is the common platform, and it's easier to share documents or share links, etc. that are in here. So I'm going to, Tom, do you want me to drive this anymore, or should we go into or are there any questions on this? And then I'll come back into it so that everyone's really comfortable with how to use it. So I don't see any of the academics in it yet. So it would be good to have some of the academics in a space. Tom, what would be possible is we can split out a group if necessary. We could subdivide groups, so have an MTM, Nook 1, etc. We could do that possibility, look at that, or just an academic group. We could try to look at how we cluster those.
The groups that you've created at the moment, like I see there's a SASI group. Is that a pretty easy thing to do? Could there be an MTM1 group and an MTM NUC 2 group?
Yeah, so we can so everyone is in NUCs. We can just make that
because I think it'll make it a lot more efficient if the communications in the Mike, Rob, myself, and you and Kim is all related to the same type of matter. And the academic discussion is all. They can still go to the all
general
one.
Yeah.
But I think that will make it much more efficient.
I'll drop a note to Jason now if you can link the organizational structure to the thing as well. That should be very easy to do. Yeah. I say Nadine's got a hand up. Nadine, go.
I have Phil. Sorry, I just wanted to double check. So we're uploading some of our documents and things for review now in the communicator section. Are we supposed to upload it in our own documents as well, or are we going to move everything over to just being uploaded in communicator?
Nadine, if we had enough mentors, it would be fine to have it in the document repository as well. For the benefit of if you're wanting, urgent feedback, but not just from a mentor. If you're wanting feedback from collective feedback, let's put it, then communicator is going to be better. If you're wanting something just from me, then it's going to be better to put it in there with you and me where we kind of linked, and I must make sure that I go in there more regularly. One of the things, Tom, I've been talking to Jason about is we want to get notifications set up here. So when someone does something, can we get a notification outside of the text? It's easy in the app, but not everyone's got the app on all the time. So we're looking at, we've got SendGrid, we're looking at ways where we could trigger maybe an email or an SMS to say, you've got mail. So we're busy looking at that. So Nadine, I think the easiest is, and so Calvin's very good, and Grant's very good, and Justin with her. If they've got something and I'm not active on CHQ, they just ping me a WhatsApp. And so we have to work out a way that we can get a notification happening. I'm busy working on that. But Nadine, so to answer your question, if you really want one-on-one, then just send it to the mentor like me or another mentor that you're connected with. But if you're wanting collective feedback, which I would urge you to consider, then put it into Communicator, because then everyone can benefit from your work as well as the responses that the mentors give you, if you're happy with that.
Sure, I hear you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Sorry, I'm overstaying my welcome again as normal. So Tom, I'll get back to you on that. I'll drop a note into the thing with Jason to say so that we want to set it up as one layer deeper with the organizational structure, because then we've got those people linked to those particular nooks. So that'll make it nice to be able to have nuances, and once we've got more mentors, it'll also help with other groups, Tom, as things scale and grow, etc. Are there any, Rob, sorry, I just want to make sure Rob is happy and comfortable so that you've got a place, and when we set up the MTM Nook 1, you've got maybe just a smaller group to deal with, not all the academics, etc., etc. Any thoughts from Rob? Any questions from you?
Phil, we actually need to get down, time is very short, and for the NUC 1 people to actually get the applications in, we need a hell of a lot more guidance on how to fill in the application form and how to document their experience. Just on another aspect, even if I log on as a mentor, I have no mentees.
Louise, can you check while Rob is not seeing all of his MTM Nook 1?
So Phil, remember I did in that breakaway session, I did indicate Rob must be linked to all 10 MTM Nook 1s, and then I also included a buddy mentor. So you can extract it out of that summary table of ours on the action plan for each candidate.
Louise, are you able to check quickly, or we can rectify it? But certainly, Rob, you should be connected.
Just tell me I must link Rob to.
So Louise, you remember that thing where you and Celestine handled the academics or SASI? Phil handled one of them, and I dealt with the MTM, and then we consolidated our feedback. Those 4 questions we asked. That spreadsheet that you've done the final version, in it under mentors, I've indicated which people Rob must be linked to, and I've indicated which mentee is going to be a buddy mentor with their colleagues. So I've done all of that for my 10 MTM NUC 1 people. Use that, so at least we can get Rob's group up and running properly.
Okay, I will go and look for that spreadsheet and I'll fix it.
Otherwise, let Phil and I know, because we've also got it. Thanks, Louise. And then can you pop Rob an email when it's done so he can go back in and play?
Louise, you know the one that exactly what Tom's talking about, when we sent that out to everyone and we broke into those 3 breakaway rooms, and then we asked 4 questions about what do you need and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, fantastic. Rob, apologies for that. We should have got you connected there. We'll get you connected in the next day or 2. So you should be able to see everybody. And then I've suggested we have a mentors group, and then we can just make sure that everybody sees everybody that they're meant to be seeing, and we can get the conversation. So we can all see each other in the whole group. And then if you are candidates, you can all see each other. And if we mentors, we can all see each other, kind of thing. And then we'll get as Tom's suggesting, we'll get the actual groupings set up as well. So there'll be quite a lot of slice and dice capability, but at least we can start to have more focused thing. Tom, Rob's talking about a lot more guidance on filling out their whole part of the process over here. So we need to see if Kim's got some time. Have you got some time to get involved in that with MTM Nook 1 and go through that? Maybe with the next breakaway session, we can plan that. Maybe the next session we have three breakaways again, and I'll work with Nadine and the SIC group.
We should strive towards that, so that we can have almost like an idiot's guide to filling in the paperwork, and then they can then populate it to suit their own circumstances. You see, Rob's problem, and I think we agreed, is we're working in a sense backwards with the MTM Nook 1s. They've got to decide what is their primary project going to be, that their project report for their professional review component is going to be based on. Then they've got to write up the TERs to support that project, and then they can go and do the TEOs, which is the more bullet point stuff.
Yeah.
But if the TERs for the last 3 to 5 years do not talk to the project report, then we're screwed. So that's, I think, where we should start, and then we can go and do the TEOs afterwards. Because remember, we've already informed or confirmed, and that's for Johan's benefit more than anyone else. There's no deviation. There's no turnover. There's an easier option on the back page for the outcomes. They don't change. They stay exactly the same. Doesn't matter what route you follow. They must be on the same intended outcome path.
Yeah, and you see the why I want to get Johan involved is he's very, very experienced at this, very pedantic, and as long as he's comfortable that there's an ECSA policy and this is how they will get around that clause. Remember that he's probably also debilitated by that clause that Rob spotted, that which you've now told us is actually misplaced, and so that's probably what Johan's got. Remember, he's not qualified at all. He's purely an administrator. So he's coming from it as a high C. He's a high C off the page. And so because there's not a rule that gives him permission to do it, he's just not going to do it in any way at all. So we need to pacify Johan, because the moment we've got Johan back on our side, he will be brilliant at going through that, because he is meticulous at going through how things need to be written. And he's helped me with many technicians and technologists and engineers over many years in getting them writing it in such a way that it's just great. But he's going to need to know that there's a rule that allows him to do that. But he's a resource we must use. Mike, you had a hand up first, and then I see Rob.
Yeah, Phil, I think that the session that we're talking about can't wait for 2 weeks. I really think that we need to have a mentors session just to set the guidelines correctly, so that we're all on the same page. And it would be great if Kim and Frederick can be in on that session. And you know, like Tom has expressed now, you know, one's got to select the topics for the last 3 to 5 years and deal with that in the engineering report. It's really crucial, because from what I've seen, a lot of chaps are writing about stuff from the beginning of their careers and then working up, and that's not going to work. We've got to do it Tom's way, where we work from the top down. And it's a session with the mentors that need to happen, so that Rob and others can then say, okay, Aaron, you talked about, you know, the way bridges on the M13, etc. What are you currently involved with? And he's currently involved with very high-tech average speed over distance stuff. You know, so that needs to come to the fore, and he needs to know that's what he needs to put his focus on. So we need to have a session early next week, I would think, set aside 2 hours and thrash it out for the mentors, so that Rob can go away satisfied that he can help the mentees. That's just my view on it.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so that was one of the suggestions in CHQ, that we have a mentor session sooner rather than later on that. So we'll just have to look at how we fit that into next week. Rob, you've got a question?
Yeah, following on from what Mike is saying, you know, what I believe is absolutely essential is that we somehow try and set up a working group with all of the NUC1, the alternative route people, with the mentors and everything like that, that they can actually then, if we look at what was presented at the last session, a lot of it was just storytelling. It wasn't answering the questions. So we need to actually help them to understand how to answer the questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I absolutely. I think we must make the assumption that everybody has read the RO2 and understands there's quite clear guidelines on how to do it. And in fact, if you go into the common documents repository, there's a lot of guidelines, and there's also some areas that we are even now discovering there's some differences between the assessors, etc., etc. But I think we're talking the same language, is that we want to get onto a session with the mentors, so we get common ground as to how we approach it. And that Tom's 100% right. It needs to be happening with sort of working backwards, and so that the TERs form the fundamental basis of a major project that can be written up in the engineering report, and that it's supported by a variety of TERs that all talk to something that can then be prepared. So all I can do is I'm going to drop a table to everyone with a set of dates and see where everyone can kind of get together. But I think it would be good to have that session soon, and then agree an action plan. But what I think is also really important is we're not going to get a sample that is going to be written as a full template. It's certainly not going to come out of me or Kim, because we're structural engineers. So we need to get to a balance between spoon feeding and guidance, so that some of the candidates are doing a lot of writing, etc. And we need to look at the nuances of how to improve that and work backwards. So I think we're all talking the same language. Tom, Mike, Rob, Friedrich's not in here, but Kim, we need to just get that date together. So I think that's really very important. When we have that session, we can let Tom drive it, because Tom's really he's the de facto expert in that space. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, once again, we're going over the time. Are there any questions, anything to resolve? Louise, if you could please just assist with getting Rob linked and making sure Tom is linked. Tom, in your CHQ, I'm assuming you can see all the NUC1.
I can see all of them, Phil.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Just a question, Tom, your thoughts, and anybody else's thoughts that want to come in there. What are your thoughts on if you and I say both linked to Calvin, that we should see each other's communications?
I think because otherwise, sometimes it's just commenting on a comment. If we can't see what each other is saying, Louise and I were playing with the communicator earlier today, and the fact that I can't see what anybody else is saying, other than in the general one, is a challenge for me. So if I go into my org admin one and look at communicator, I put, for example, a comment to Aaron, but I can't see if Aaron's, talking to anybody else or who's talking to him. So we need to have the connectivity, or else it's not shared learning that's taking place.
Exactly. So I think the way around it, just from a GDPR and a POPIA Act, is that we'll give the mentee a selectable, like they do with their documentation, and we give them a selectable, and we say to them, you have to approve that all your mentors can be seen in a common group kind of thing, and then that'll go away. But at least then we covered from a POPIA and a GDPR kind of thing. Okay, I don't have anything more. Any other final questions? Any other things for today?
So Phil, are we going to take the mentor session offline for early next week to pursue Mike and Rob's queries, and then we'll use that as the common ground in the communicator, And then we will, from that, develop the session that we're going to have with at least the MTM NUC 1, possibly later in next week or early the week after, prior to our make session.
Yeah, I think what the first thing is to get together with the mentors and then agree the plan of action. And if that has to happen and we have to build it into all of the hysteria and festivities of next week, then we have to find a place to do that. Yeah, absolutely. But what'll come out of that session is a plan, and how we move forward, and that we can all see each other, and we all, we've all got seeing the common documents and things like that.
Okay, cool.
We just need to find a date. We just need to find a date. So I'm going to drop everyone an email. Well, I'll send it to Louise, and if she could just drop all of the mentors an email, and so with a couple of dates, and just see who can join when they can join.
Okay, and then yeah, okay, so we're good, Phil?
I think we're good. Any other hands up? Any other questions? Anybody? No. Okay. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. I can see Celestine's mic's going, but I can't see her hand up. Celestine, did you want to come in?
No. I'm fine, Phil. No questions, no comments.
Okay. Sorry, I just saw your mic open. Okay. All right. 100%. Thanks, everyone. I will. We'll be in touch. But if you can just start watching the common group in CHQ, because it's where all the conversations are going, and I will let you know when some of the other things like responding to a quote, etc., is coming in. Okay. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks,
chat
everybody.
soon.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
Take care.